What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Winter Wolf's Den. Just going to come at you with an early morning edition today. It's about 9:30 where I am. Just wanted to cover Rings of Power 1 and 2 before we get into episode 3 next week. I don't want to get too far behind with House of the Dragon coming up today. I'll give you my initial impressions of the show and cover a little bit of the controversy that seems like it's going on out there in the internet world. To address that actually first, I think it's kind of cowardly when review sites like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and Metacritic disable reviews for shows when they come out, because they only ever seem to disable them one way. They always seem to worry about the review bombing of the negative, and they never apply that same level of transparency or eagerness to eliminate the overblown praise machine 5-star reviews that get thrown out a lot when these new shows tend to show up. And I propose this. I think if you really want to be taken seriously as a review aggregator, why don't you go ahead and install an algorithm that either basically makes you register a unique account to post a review, and then couple that with you need to have a minimum number of words in a review, and have that same algorithm filter for repeated words so you couldn't just write the words stunning and brave 50 times and get away with that as a review. Or look for key buzzwords that just kind of appear in patterns. Because if you scroll down the review pages of Rotten Tomatoes in particular, you tend to see the exact same phraseology and the same cadence in how these reviews are written. Now, I get it. A lot of people tend to use the same buzzwords. Culturally, we speak with the same slang. So we say cool, or we say, epic, or we say whatever we say. The people tend to share the language, and that's fine. But it's striking to me how if we look down some of those same reviews, the sentences are basically laid out in the same form. The paragraphs are, 2 or 3 sentences long, and it usually mentions those key buzzwords or adjectives in the same place almost every time, with the minimal amount of change. So it does look like there's bots at play there on both the 5-star and the 1-star reviews. And I think it would make for a more interesting, more honest discussion on these shows, these IPs, if we were to eliminate every 1-star review that just said sucks. Like, that doesn't help me as a consumer. Like, I don't care. I automatically associate that with somebody that just wasn't going to watch the show and make an objective, honest assessment anyway. But I also apply that same metric to people that just want to tell me best show ever, 10 out of 10 after 1 episode, or even before the episode launches. Because it's funny how they let you leave 5-star reviews early, and there never seems to be any issues with reviews glitching out or not loading properly when it's a 5-star review on these shows. It's always on the 1-stars. So I think if you eliminate both ends of the extremes, the 1s and the 5s, or if you at least treat them a little bit more with a little bit more delicacy, and just understand that some of them are all bullshit on both sides, we can probably get to the heart of the matter and just understand what a show really is. Minus the 1%ers on either side that just have their agendas that they're trying to hit. And I get it. Plenty of sites that are paid access shills that are going to 100% give you 100% glowing ball licking reviews on a show like this, because they get their swag out of it, they get their access out of it. They're allowed to tour the sets and tour the studios and get invited to the stupid superfan events that we all know were some bullshit and we're all paid for and nobody took seriously. And those actually got bombed. They got absolutely ratioed into oblivion on YouTube if you had the extension hooked up and you could still see the dislikes. But having said all that, I'm going to give you my honest impressions of episodes 1 and 2. And I say this as a guy with a fairly solid affinity for the Fellowship movies. Tolerated the Hobbit movies. Loved the old school 70s stuff. I grew up on that, so I'm down. And as a guy that's read the novel series probably maybe 2 or 3 times in my lifetime. So I'm not a lore purist. So once we get past all of the crap that comes out around these shows at the beginning, where the actors always, it's like they feel obligated to do this, where they try to elevate their station as actors into activists. And this has never helped a show that I'm aware of, ever. Like, if anybody has any examples of where this actually worked out for a show for the better, please comment down below. Do it now, because I don't see it working out ever. Between 2 of the 3 leads getting into some of the stuff that they said about wanting to be an activist or not wanting to be an activist, versus just focusing on the story dynamics of the show, they should have just stood down with that altogether, because it doesn't add up to quality in any situation. They could have just avoided that and given me what we needed. And on top of things like that, when we have showrunners making statements about needing to transform one of the best-selling pieces of fiction in history into something more modernized, I think it just goes to show really how far off target they are with adapting this IP. You know, we have a book series by a legendary author that's been translated into 30 some odd languages, and it's been in publication for 7 decades and had billions of copies sold. It doesn't need modernizing because it's timeless. There's something you can find in it for anybody that's reading it. No one, to my knowledge, in the modern era has ever been told they can't buy a copy or watch the film. So it's there for you to see and interpret as you see fit. In some cases, it doesn't really always add up to the author's message, but it's there for you to consume at your leisure. So modernizing it, I think, is a bad play, and it's a faulty mechanism to try and put your agenda out there, because it's always going to be met with resistance. So you didn't have to go that route. Everybody was invited to the Tolkien party. You could have just had a seat at the table without demanding we start changing what was being served at the party. We didn't need to go that route. But having said all that stuff, let me get into my quick thoughts on the 2 episodes I watched. I did watch both of them last Friday. I watched them in tandem, kind of like a movie. I figured I'd probably just bang them right out. It looks good. I see, for the most part, where they spent their $8 trillion or whatever they spent on this show. Most of the CGI works. It specifically works in the establishing shots and in the settings. A lot of them look good. Eregion and I think it's a Khazad-dûm of the dwarves. The landscapes and the interiors looked really cool as they were setting stuff up. It was good. It was a good choice. It was good execution of lighting and things like that when they did that, especially the elvish trees that provided light to the world. That was pretty cool there. So they're getting their money's worth out of that. They also got their money's worth in episode 2. There was a couple of the Sundering Seas scenes where Galadriel finds herself. A lot of that stuff I thought looked pretty good also. Lighting and wave effects, things like that. But technical stuff aside, it's just slow, guys. It's setting up I know what it's trying to do. It's setting up a lot of stuff. A lot of the arcs. It's like Game of Thrones in a way. There's a lot of people doing things in different places that are going to meet up and their stories are going to intertwine. But unlike House of the Dragon, through 3 episodes, there's nothing really compelling going on just yet. They don't give you anything to really dig your teeth into that provides like any must-see TV, anything that makes you really want to come back and see what's going on. The stuff with the Harfoots is fine. They're discount hobbits at best. The actress that plays Nori Brandyfoot, who like the main Harfoot character, she's basically stand-in for Frodo. She's likable, I guess. She's got a big heart. She's a caregiver. I can see why people would like that. She takes care of the kids. She takes care of a certain visitor that kind of falls into the Harfoot encampment, or falls nearby. And there's a good setup there. There's more diversity in this group than you're gonna see in other places, and that's fine. The writers invented this subsegment of folks to get hobbits actually into the time period, so that all works. And see, this is why I hate when these guys do this before the show launches. They don't talk like the diversity has been forced. They speak and behave like normal people do. Like there's Harfoots that are black, there's Harfoots that are white, and they just interact like normal people. They don't interact like fucking Twitter people, so it's all tolerable. They're kind of funny. There's a couple women that do the snarky bitchy thing, but there's a few that don't. The guys aren't played off as buffoons. There's a guy in charge. So, I mean, the people that were going to advocate that, the woke message is being pushed through and through. I think they're missing the mark so far with that, unless you're really looking to apply the label to everything that has somebody that isn't a straight white dude at the charge of something. I just don't think that adds up here. So that's an unfair assessment by some people so far for that segment. The stuff with Galadriel, on the other hand, that's where it gets a little overbearing with the girl boss stuff. I wanted to watch this show and kind of view her through a prism of, she's kind of like Ahab going after Moby Dick. Like, she's on this vengeance quest. So of course she's going to be single-minded and focused and, obsessed with finding Sauron wherever he is and defeating him and eradicating orcs and this and that. But the problem is if you go back and you read through Moby Dick, Ahab has moments of likability where he's interacting like a normal person. In this show so far, I don't think Galadriel's cracked a smile once, and that includes when she's among friends, when she's with Elrond, like her best friend in this show, and they do their canon twisting thing, and if you're a lore purist, it's probably going to annoy you how they did that, so I can't fault you for disliking that if you do. But I find her so far to be wholly unlikable, and that's even after I thought they tried to give her a moment where, because you look for these things in writing, it's the save the cat beat that's common in these kind of fictional IPs, where she's leading her company across the frozen tundra to, track down the orcs wherever they are. The one guy goes down, her second in command, yells for her to stop the march. She refuses, and that's where they cut scenes. So it makes her look like, in the trailer, it makes her look like she's a bit of a nut and she's obsessed. She moving on at the expense of her men. But in the episode, she actually goes back to the guy that went down and gives him her cloak and leaves her, without any shielding from the winter elements that are pounding her group. So they did try to give her that element where she basically went back and provided for somebody in her care, under her command. And that was a good move. But the more you strip back the layers of this, it just doesn't, how they set her in motion doesn't work. Like if she's on a 6-month to a year-long quest, which they tell you, runs over, and she's out past her patrol time, even at that point, when you look at these guys, they're not geared for long-range trek or camping or warfare or anything. Like she's got 8 or 9 guys with her, 8 or 9 people. I couldn't really tell males and females within the group because of the armor and whatnot. They're like a light strike group at best. What are you supposed, they're geared up to battle in the moment now. There's no packs, there's no wagons, they have no horses, no mules, they have no supplies that I can see on them. They're literally just torches, swords, cloaks, and they're walking through blizzards as far north as they can go. And that's all well and good, but it's kind of a foolish setup. And I think a lot of the foolishness that comes out in this show comes out around trying to prop her up as a superhero type of character within this world, and it didn't need to be that way. We get more of that when she actually reaches the destination in the north. There's an abandoned castle that Sauron had used, and it's the thing everybody's seen online so far, where they mix it up with an ice troll or a snow troll or whatever they called it. And basically this thing gets the drop on 4 elves, smashes a few into walls, doesn't kill them somehow. And then Galadriel does the obligatory, run up the position sword of her second in command, flying Arya strike into the troll and kind of engages it one-on-one and basically makes quick work of it, which is foolish. So if you look back on the Fellowship in that first movie, they had an armed and fresh complement of people fighting, including a wizard, right? And they had their effing hands full in that room with that troll and the little goblin shits that were there too, or the little orc shits, whatever's there. So they're trying to play her up into being Captain Marvel, and it doesn't. I don't like it so far, and hopefully the writers are smart enough to soften her over time, because a lot of what she's done so far is early Captain Marvel stuff. When they get back from this expedition, she has to answer for disobeying orders and going over time, and the consequence of that is the king of the High Elves, Gil-galad, goes ahead and offers her the opportunity to go to Valinor and kind of live out her days in the Undying Lands, which was a political move to get rid of her, so I thought that was okay. But she abandons that on the trek as they're sailing across the Sundering Seas to Valinor, and decides to swim her way thousands of miles. I don't know how far it is, but it's far. She was just going to swim back through the ocean, I guess, and that's elves aren't, they're not functionally superheroes. They can't just run forever, swim forever. It doesn't work, but she was going to do it. Had no bearing, no idea which way to go. She gets turned around in a storm, meets up with some people, gets attacked by a water serpent thing, and somehow still knows how to plot her course on the raft with the other survivor when they go back. And then they get picked up by, I won't spoil it, but they get picked up by somebody else on a boat. So she's in water, and she gets 3 random coincidences to further where she needs to go through no effort of her own, other than doing the dumb thing up front, which was jump off the effing ship that was going to the Undying Lands. So they're really playing her out to be wholly unlikable so far. She has no bonds of kinship with anybody. She's not friendly really with anybody. and it's not that enjoyable to watch. It's definitely a Captain Marvel vibe watching her so far. And the other main like plot arc that they've set up here is with Andorin, one of the elves that's watching over the lands of Mordor before it gets taken over by the orcs. They kind of do the occupation thing, and he's got the unspoken love interest with one of the human females that's there, and we'll find out later on that that's their kid together. I guarantee it. If that's not already a thing in the know, it just jumped out at me right away. That's probably how that was gonna go. And that plot arc is okay. In short, it's the elves are pulling out because the war has been over for so long. They don't think they need to occupy anymore. That particular elf begrudgingly, actually no, not begrudgingly, he willingly goes back to check in on the female one more time, and when he gets there, he realizes there is something going on. There is kind of a poison or a pestilence going around, and upon further investigation, he gets captured by some orcs, which was pretty cool. But I thought that particular character doesn't come off like an elf, really. Comes off more like a Vulcan from Star Trek. Very stoic. There's not a lot of emotion, but in Lord of the Rings that we saw before with the elves are stoic, but there's like a dryness to their humor. They can be a little snarky. If you remember when the Fellowship rolled into Galadriel's when they rolled up into her forest when they were captured, they get the one elf there that brings the reinforcements and towers. He's got the half smile and he's talking a little bit of like elf smack, and it's kind of, he's personable. I'm not getting that from this character so far. He's probably just written that way. It's no fault of the actors at all. It's just not how elves have just been in this world. And I think that brings me to my main aesthetic issue with the show so far, is that the elves don't feel like elves at all. And that's not because they got a black guy in there at all. It's like the white elves don't feel like elves at all. Too many of them just look and behave like ho-hum, average, run-of-the-mill humans. The elves are always described as being tall and slender, or athletic, with like the long straight hair, the flowing mane kind of thing. At least in Tolkien, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about Dungeons and Dragons, like Warcraft or anything else, right? And too many of these guys have like varied, fresh out the salon or fresh out the barbershop haircuts. Elrond in particular, it doesn't look right. It's not how it's supposed to be. They also, how they're lit and how they're presented, they just look like normal people as is. There's nothing glowing to them. There's no ethereal quality to them. Their eyes don't have starlight sparkle in it like Galadriel had in the Fellowship movies. They just seem like people that are dressed in like slightly better robe type costumes, and I don't like that. It doesn't feel like Tolkien elves. Conversely, when they get over to Khazad-dûm and you get some dwarf action in there, those guys look and dress and they kind of behave like dwarves. They're kind of built and stocky. They got the big noses. They got the braided beards and things like that. And they get the no beards on the women thing wrong over there. That's a separate issue. But so I guess in short, and to wrap up, there's plenty to dislike in this show if you're a purist. There's plenty to dislike in this show if you're trying to slap woke on it and not just view it objectively. I don't see a lot to like and latch onto yet. They think they have a couple of mysteries unfolding, and for plenty of the normies, I guess they probably will be. They will be mysteries because you won't have known what Amazon had the rights to and which characters they can use and can't use. But so far, I haven't found the character that I want to see more of, like I have in House of the Dragon with Daemon Targaryen. Like, I'm showing up on Sundays to see what he does next, and I'm going to show up on Sunday to see what the crab feeder villain that they've introduced gets up to. There's enough politicking on that show through 3 episodes to make me interested in that, or through 2 or however many it's been. But so far here through 2 episodes, and in stark contrast again to the MCU stuff, we got an hour plus out of each of these, so they had time to do things, but I don't think they used it in a very compelling way yet. But this one's running long, guys. I'll check out episode 3 and report back. I hope you guys are enjoying this show. If you're watching it, if you are, comment below. Let me know what you think of it. If you think it's an absolute flaming dumpster fire, I'm interested in hearing that too. And I will catch you in the next one.